Shavua Tov, Agut Tavoch. I would like to tell story number 118 of the Shivchei haBaal Shem Tov, the oldest gathering of Baal Shem Tov stories ever published. The title of the story, 118 of the Shivchei haBaal Shem Tov, is Ma'ase Alila de Kehilas Pavilatch, the story of the blood libel of the community of Pavilatch. Just to give a little historic context, there is a town near Zhytomyr in central Ukraine called Pavilatch. Pavilatch is how they render in the story, in Yiddish, I guess, where a group of Jews from the city were accused in the year 1753 of having committed ritual murder of children to use their blood to prepare matzah for Passover, for Pesach. That is certainly a false accusation. There is a name for it, a blood libel, and I'll explain about it after the story. All right? So historically, it happened. Now we're going to the story. The Rav of the community of Karchishov, whose name was Rav David, escaped. He wanted to flee as far as the lands of Wallachia. Wallachia was a different kingdom outside of the sovereignty of where the accusation had been made. They wanted to be out of the jurisdiction, not to fall into such terrible accusation. All the important people of the area of Pavilatch, towns around, were afraid that a label would be made against them. And when this Rav David arrived at the holy community of Mezhibosh, the Baal Shem Tov stopped him, delayed him, and told him several times, assuring him that they would be safe. The Jews that were accused will be saved. But the Jews were killed. As a matter of fact, there were 12 Jews that were put to death in Zhytomyr. Because they were from the town of Pavilatch, we know it as the Alilas Dam Pavilatch, the blood libel of Pavilatch. So once the news came that these 12 Jews have been put to death, a letter came to Rav David telling him about the horrible and painful tortures that each of them suffered, details of how it happened. He brought the letter to the Baal Shem Tov. And the Baal Shem Tov saw the letter and became very, very sad. He was stricken by this grief. That day was Erev Shabbos, was the eve of Shabbos. So the Baal Shem Tov went to the mikveh crying. He davened mincha, he prayed the afternoon prayer in bitterness. And the Anshei Segulato, the closest the Hasidim, could not lift their heads. They felt this heavy burden that had fallen on the Baal Shem Tov, and they said to themselves, maybe when he actually welcomes Shabbos, he will lift his spirits and he will do it joyfully, like he always does. But the Baal Shem Tov prayed Kabbalah Shabbos with bitterness. And he went on into the evening prayer, into a Arvit, Ma'ariv, very, very sad. By the time he came to the table and he made Kiddush in tears, crying. He washed his hands and sat at the table for a moment, and then he stood up and went to his room. There he stretched himself on the floor and lay for a long time. So long that the people from his house, or his family members, and the guests were around the Shabbos table waiting. So long that the candles were about to die out. So the Baal Shem Tov's wife stood, and she went to the room and told the Baal Shem Tov, the candles will soon be consumed, will die out, and the guests are waiting. So he said to her, let them eat and let them bench, let's say the after meals grace, right, the Birkat Hamazon, and let them go. That was it. Like, oh, I'm not coming. So they did, and then the Baal Shem Tov's wife went to the room and lay down on the bed. The Baal Shem Tov remained lying on the floor, his arms and his legs outstretched, he's immobile in the floor, and Rav David, curious, came close to the door to figure out what was going on. Well, he became tired of standing, so he brought a small bench and sat by the door, and about midnight, he hears that the Baal Shem Tov tells his wife, "Cover your face." At that moment, the room became brightly lit, and the shiny light could get through the cracks of the door outward. It was like coming out. He could see this light. And Rab David hears the Baal Shem Tov's voice saying, "Baruch haba Reb Akiva." Welcome, Reb Akiva. Some people read the story thinking he's talking about Rabbi Akiva from the time of the Mishnah, which is highly unlikely. Yes, he was a martyr, but doesn't make sense according to the story. I think, and there is an opinion among the people who read the book and edited, that this is one of the 12 Jews that were put to death. His name is Akiva, Reb Akiva. It will make sense according to reading the story, this sense. So the Baal Shem Tov says, "Baruch haba, welcome, Reb Akiva." And then he starts saying, "Baruch haba, Baruch haba, Baruch haba" to all the martyrs, so all the Kedoshim, the Jews that were killed in Zhitomir. Rab David recognizes Reb Akiva by his voice. Obviously, he recognizes the voice of somebody from his time, not from 2,000 years ago, so it makes sense. Reb Akiva is one of the Kedoshim, one of the martyrs. The Baal Shem Tov said to the Kedoshim, to the martyrs, I decree that you need to go and take revenge on the prosecutor. He uses the Yiddish word, the Strigator. Baal Shem Tov calls him the Strigator. So he makes this decree. You need to go and take revenge on him. The Kedoshim reply, do not let these words pass from your lips again. Shh. And you need to nullify that which you just said. Be null, like cancel it. For your elevated highness, that's how they speak to the Baal Shem Tov. You are not aware of your power. When you began Shabbos in such a state, you caused such a tumult up there in Gan Eden, up above. People start fleeing from the chalos, from the palaces, one to another, as they are running away from the sword. And we reach one of the highest of the chalos, of the palaces up in Gan Eden, and people from there too were fleeing, confused, not knowing what was going on. And as we came up higher and higher, we came to a very high place where they knew. And they told us, hurry, you must go quiet down, calm down the tears of the Baal Shem Tov. Now let us tell you, oh, your high, sir, your highness, that all the suffering that a man has to endure in this world is but the skin of a garlic clove, that thin, compared to all the suffering we had to endure as Kedoshim, that we die al Kiddush Hashem, for the sanctification of the name of God. Nevertheless, the Yetzer Hara did his own trick and confused our thoughts. The thickness of a thread of silk, tiny bit, we were confused. And because of that, we were to, even though we rejected the Yetzer Hara with both hands, we were condemned to suffer half an hour in Gehenna. And then we entered Gan Eden. We went up there, and we began to argue that we wanted to take revenge upon the category, upon those who accused us falsely for this, those who caused such a thing. We were told that their time hasn't come yet. They are still alive. If you want to take revenge, you will have to go back in another Gilgul. You have to go back to live again. And we said, oh, Tehillah Lakem. Tehillah Lakel is praise be upon God that we already lived and we die al Kiddush Hashem as Kedoshim, as martyrs, and we had to endure the suffering, the torment of Gehenna, half an hour, and all the sufferings that a person has to go through in this life are like the skin of a garlic clove compared to what we had to suffer for half an hour in Gehenna. What would be of us if we were to born, to another life again in this world? And what if we mess it up and commit a sin, a transgression, God forbid, chas v'shalom, and then we have no redemption? We already messed up our chance. Therefore, it's better that we don't take revenge and we don't go for another Gilgul, another reincarnation. We are asking you, O Highly One, to cancel what you have said, that we need to go and do the revenge. So the Baal Shem Tov said, why was I not told from heaven that you were going to become, destined to become martyrs? So they told him, had you known, you would have davened, you would have prayed with such kavanah, with such fervor, such intent, that you would have cancelled the decree. And then a much worse calamity would have happened. Chas v'shalom, God forbid. Therefore, you were not informed that this was going to happen anyway. So is the story as originally heard, but then the author, Rav Dover of Linitz, says that he heard from the Rav of his community, Rabbi Gedalia of Linitz, and the Baal Shem Tov said that he was promised from Shamayim, from heaven, that they were going to cancel the decree and those 12 Jews were going to be saved. But there was a darshan. Darshan is a scholar that gives drashas, that gives speeches, like the story last week. And he went to the community of Brody and pocketed in the money from the Pidyon Shvuim, meaning he gave a drasha for the purpose to collect that money for Pidyon Shvuim, to redeem the captives, and he benefited from it instead of giving the money for the purpose, and this caused severe judgments on heaven. And that is why the Jews that were being judged in Zhytomyr, the Jews from Pavilatch, were condemned to death and die because of our many sins, our many transgressions. And so goes the story. Now, I said that I was going to explain a little bit about the Alilas Dam, the blood libel. So the blood libels are false accusations that the anti-Semites crafted to accuse Jews of sacrificing Christian children in order to use their blood for religious rituals. Usually, as the stories were made in medieval Europe, they will specify that this was blood to be used for making the matzah to use for Pesach, for Passover. Well, in reality, we know that Torah would completely forbid this. Both kidnapping and human sacrifice are completely forbidden, and consumption of blood for any ritual is out of the question, it's forbidden. The laws of kashrus, the laws of dietary laws in Judaism forbid the consumption of blood, even in a small, tiny amount. If a drop of blood by accident were to fall in the dough when the matzah is being prepared, or in the matzah once it's baked, whenever, that matzah or that dough would become posel, will not be acceptable to be used at all, whether it's for Pesach or the rest of the year. We cannot use it. So the accusation has no bearing in reality. And the practice of human sacrifice by Judaism is such an anathema, is such a forbidden thing. In the Torah is very clear that that is forbidden as an abominable act of idolatry, and has never been part of any Jewish ritual whatsoever. That as far as what a blood libel is. I'm telling the Baal Shem Tov stories from the Shivchei Baal Shem Tov every week and translating them. I'm telling them here in the channel in English and in Spanish, and I'm working on a detailed translation in Spanish with the hope to publish the book, the whole book, Shivchei Baal Shem Tov, for the first time in Spanish. And I appreciate all contributions for my efforts to do this, to keep the channel running, making the videos, translating the stories, and for the future edition publishing of the book that I am continuously working on. Links in the description, and a prayer and all our best wishes to all those who are confronting today the very difficult situation of war, our soldiers, the captive ones, and everybody who is suffering because of this. May Hashem redeem us all, bring a swift, clear victory and resolution, and may things be just done with blessing and goodness. Shavua Tov, a gute Woche.